Hello. Welcome to the show. My name is Swartik Mayanja, and today I am lucky enough to have one of the free speech rally that was supposed to happen this past Saturday. That did happen this past Saturday, but we'll get into the details of that. And we are here to talk about how it's supposed to go, why it happened, and what did we miss.
You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
Hey! So I am right now with John Medlar. Please tell us who you are and how it has come for you to be one of the co-organizers of the Free Speech Rally.
Well, my name is John Medlar. I'm a spokesperson for the rally and one of the co-organizers with the our little group that we call the Boston Free Speech Coalition. And I've been on your show before, Swartik, as a sort of a private individual, but coincidentally, I found myself sort of volunteering with this group of guys that we just sort of got together and saw a lot of things that were happening in the country that we were very concerned with, about the state of free speech and our constitutional values in this country, and we thought we'd do something that to us, started out as something that we thought was just sort of fun and interesting. I thought we could get some speakers down to a venue, like to a public venue like Boston Common, and sort of get some interesting perspective on current events.
So just clear, where did you guys meet and how did that happen?
Well, we originally got together. The original group of guys sort of got together on 4chan.
Okay.
It was out of 4chan. A bunch of some threads were starting up about, particularly in regards to the actions of radical groups like Antifa shutting down UC Berkeley. And some people on 4chan were getting together and saying, hey, we should have a free speech rally here out on the East Coast, because a lot of that stuff was happening on the West Coast.
Yes.
And we thought, hey, maybe we should have some kind of free speech rally out on the East Coast. And it turned out that a bunch of people involved in that thread happened to be from Boston, or the Boston area. And we were like, hey, how about we do it in Boston? It's the birthplace of America, the cradle of liberty.
Amen to that. Go Boston.
Yeah. So we had our first rally back in May.
So you already had a rally.
Yeah.
So this wasn't the first.
This wasn't the first. The first rally that we had a couple hundred people attending. Mm-hmm. Maybe about similar amount, slightly less counter protesting. Mostly Antifa types. Though they didn't mess with us. Because if you know something about Antifa, they usually don't get violent unless they see a clear advantage.
Okay, we'll get there in just a second. Let me try to fix this live thread because it hasn't reconnected. I might just restart it. Okay, so for those who missed it, this is Johnny Medlar, and we are going to talk about the free speech rally that happened this past Saturday, which was big news. So obviously coming out of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
So that was huge. Charlottesville was huge. The entire world, America, everyone knows about what happened there. They were neo-Nazis, KKK, they were white supremacists. They were marching down the street, and they were trying to protest the taking down of the Robert E. Lee statue. Mm-hmm. And then what came when everyone heard that was what they were fighting for, what they wanted to do, came the Antifa, as you said earlier, came the counter-protesters. Would you say in that Charlottesville protest, the Charlottesville march, whichever side you are on, would you say it was a peaceful protest on both sides? Would you say it was?
Are we talking about Charlottesville here?
Yes. Right now, I want to start at Charlottesville.
That was anything but peaceful.
Okay.
I was looking at a lot of the live streams going down there, and all that was going through my head was, even when it wasn't peaceful, a lot of the just symbolism that they were using. All that was going through my head was, man, this is just pure cancer.
Yes, it is. So I'm happy you said that, and that's a really good place for us to start because it seems as though, I don't know how many white supremacists, so how many people that were like neo-Nazis, KKK, wanted to be a part of the free speech rally that was happening this Saturday. But it seemed like everyone thought that it was going to be the same crowd that comes to Boston and tries to do all of that craziness. Explain the differences between what you were trying to do in your organization versus the neo-Nazis, the KKK, and the white supremacists that were marching and fighting the Robert E. Lee statue?
Well, our main goal has been to try to get together a coalition of people from a wide range of ideological backgrounds who share, our constitutional and free speech values, regardless of whether they're, conservatives, libertarians, progressives. Now, because of our rally back in May was largely in reaction to Antifa, we had a bunch of right-wingers speaking at that one. And so when we first started planning for this one, we reached out to the people who spoke at that one, and they were the first who signed on. And those were sort of reflected on the first posters that we released. Those were the first names that we released.
Yes.
And which in retrospect, that was a bit of a mistake because it allowed
the far right.
Yeah. Now I wouldn't say far. Not in it. Well, these labels often get confusing. Because if you think that I would say that I would say the most radical individual that we had was that we had at least at the last rally, and that we had initially invited at this rally. Probably the most radical individual that we had was Augustus Invictus, but even by
and why would you say he was the most? Because I don't know who he is, so why don't you tell me a little bit why
he's a very radical libertarian. But so I do know that he has I actually haven't looked much into his views on race. I do know that he has talked about I do know that he's spoken out against what he perceives to be anti-white bigotry. Now, I believe that bigotry against all peoples is wrong, regardless of skin color. So he also, Augustus Invictus, has said some other very controversial things, like he does believe that essentially a second civil war would be necessary to essentially save the country.
So he does seem very, very extreme. He's on the extreme.
But ultimately, he's still a libertarian. So I don't see him trying to force his views on other people. Which is very different from, this is one of the reasons why Augustus himself rejects the label alt-right. He was one of the people speaking at Charlottesville, but he's always struck me as someone who's willing to essentially talk to any group of people that he feels that he can reach.
Yes.
So so that's, even though he's also sort of infamously sacrificed a goat and drank its blood. So he is very out there.
Okay, that sounds a little crazy. I mean, the fact that you said that puts him, out of my reach. I wouldn't be open. Yeah, I mean, of course, I like to hear people out, but it just sounds like he does things that are just not in the realm of,
He's not normal. I'll say that.
There you go.
I will talk to anyone who's willing to talk with me. But but as far as the alt-right, the thing about the alt-right is that they generally they reject the United States Constitution. They reject capitalism even. They reject pretty much anything. They espouse what they consider to be, they want single-payer healthcare. They want wealth redistribution. They want basically a lot of things that we would consider socialist. They just want it only for white people. So in a very literal sense, you could consider them national socialists.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. So that sounds and
one of the reasons why I'm wary of the alt-right specifically is because they don't want to extend the same rights to everyone. I'm a free speech absolutionist. I think that the Constitution needs to apply to everybody.
Yes. So, all right. So, good. So we have got a little bit of background on who was there, who was speaking, and like the end fringes of the out there's, right? So tell me specifically, what are your beliefs? Where do you stand? And specifically for this free speech rally, what was the goal? What's the aim of the rally? What you guys want at the end of that?
Well, me personally, I'm a libertarian, so I believe that that society is at its best when individuals take as much take responsibility for themselves and get their own lives together, rather than relying on government bureaucrats who are less efficient at literally everything. So, I'm not one of those types of libertarians who's all like, oh, just do drugs and have sex and all those, the libertine types.
The fun types. I'm kidding.
Sure, the fun types. But no, I still think that all of that should be legal. It should be permissible. But I think that ultimately, if too many people make those types of choices, that ultimately that does worse for the society. But I don't think the answer is government regulation. I think the answer needs to come from sort of a grassroots cultural sense, where we need to encourage more people to make good choices on their own and take their own lives into their own hands.
See, that's the thing. It's crazy to me, like when you hear people out, like what he just did, explain what he feels and how he feels. I'm already feeling like, holy cow, like I believe a lot of that, because I too think prostitution should be legal everywhere. I think that it should be. I too believe that drugs, and when I say drugs, I mean all drugs. I'm talking about all the bad drugs, right? should be legal, and so it's nice to hear that. You know, it's nice to hear someone you think you're going to disagree with on everything, and the more you talk, the more stuff you start to agree with.
You mentioned prostitution there. That's an interesting example because I'm also come from a traditional Catholic background. So so morally, I think that prostitution is wrong, but I think that the consequences of outlawing it are even worse. I do think it should be. I do think it should be legal, even though morally I oppose it.
Okay. So you want individuals to have the maximum amount of freedom without government getting involved in any aspect of their life,
as much as possible. Because I don't think that there's anything virtuous about forcing people to do the right thing. That they're not doing the right thing because it's the right thing. They're doing it because you're forcing them.
Exactly.
And if you take if that's the only reason they're doing it, then they're going to find a ways to get around it.
All right, so let's talk about the rally now. So, the ultimate goal, the end goal of the free speech rally, what was it, and how were you guys planning on getting there?
Well, the goal of the free speech rally was to assemble a broad range of voices to talk about First Amendment related issues that we're facing today. Okay. So some of those would be cultural, like Antifa. Some of those would be legal, like there's a law. There are some laws being proposed that would essentially criminalize the boycotting or criticism of the Israeli government here in the United States, which I'm a big supporter of Israel, but I think you should obviously be able to criticize a foreign government.
I am right there with you. I feel like the Republican Party especially are so pro Netanyahu, it's insane. But that's for another day. So you want anyone and everyone to be able to say what they want, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So when you were at the rally, the free speech rally, I don't know, why don't you tell me how many you think were there for the actual rally and not to protest you guys?
Well, we only managed to get about, between 20 and 50 of us actually inside the rally, but I guarantee you there was hundreds of people out there that were trying to get in, but unfortunately they were swamped by all the counter-protesters. They were heavily outnumbered.
Yes.
I won't deny that.
So explain to me how that happened. So, you wanted them to come in. Why didn't you just tell them, the police officers, why was it so difficult to get the rally folks into where the rally is supposed to be? Why was that so difficult?
Well, first off, I think there was a little bit of miscommunication about how we would get in because the police wouldn't let anyone in until I was the first one in because I was the permit holder.
Yes.
So I was essentially told in the police briefing that there would be 3 entrances sort of on the south side of the venue, and in addition to a sort of evacuation corridor, things got messy. But it turns out that in addition to the evacuation corridor, there were 2 entrances, and they were on the north side.
Okay.
So when I got there, I realized that where am I supposed to get in? So I had to sort of make my way all around. In the meantime, all my other team was trying to get in, but since I was the permit holder, they wouldn't let anyone else in until I was there.
Makes sense. What time did you get there?
I got there prior to the startup time at 10.
Okay. So you were there pretty early.
Well, everyone else. Well, I should have gotten there earlier. That's the thing.
All right.
Because
fair enough.
That would have helped things a lot, helped us get in there, move a little quick. But so what happened was that once I did get in there, first they had to call in one of their one of their higher-ranking officers to verify my identity, and then they had me try to point out other people that I knew from my team for them to let in. Okay. And as soon as the counter-protesters realized that people were being let in, they swarmed the gates. Jeez. They swarmed the gates and sort of started surrounding everything. So,
but no violence. They were just there. No violence.
Not that I could see, but they were definitely physically making it physically difficult for people to enter. I have heard other people say that they saw punches being thrown somewhere. As
I think there were 15 or 30 arrests,
something like that. Now, I think most of those were between the clashes between counter-protesters and
police officers. Yes,
those came later.
Yeah.
I do know that one of our guys who we know by the username of Ultra, essentially got jumped by Antifa as he was trying to get in, and he had to essentially get the hell out of there. So basically, the police would only let in people who I designated, that's our guy, get him in here.
So the thing with me is, I don't see, and I don't know too many people that would be against what you're saying. You're saying free speech is free speech is free speech. Everyone should have that right to say whatever they want, whenever they want, without anyone like physically harming them, without having any repercussions that are like out of the world, right?
That seems like that would seem to be a very you would think
a very
that
progressive look. I feel like
you would think so, but we have this sort of weird sense in the days of a sort of new cultural authoritarianism that's, I think, infected largely the left. It used to be that the left would be the one standing hardcore free speech, and you'd have the right try to censor things in the name of decency or whatever.
So give me an example, because a lot of people say this, but give me an example of how you think the left is actually impeding on your right to free speech.
Well, what they do is they take something they don't like, they define it as hate speech, and then they say that can't be allowed, that has to be banned, or that needs to be, or we need to, punch the Nazis, quote unquote.
Okay. Do you believe me walking around with a neo-Nazi flag? Do you think me having a KKK, I don't want to say costume or outfit, but like the getup? Do you think if I have that on, is that my right to free speech? And should I be able to walk with a Nazi flag and a KKK outfit on down any street in America, wherever I like, whenever I like?
I think that the proper response to that is to confront the person, not necessarily assault them, but I do think that the proper response to hate speech is with speech.
Okay.
Because what I often find is, like I said, I will talk to anybody who is willing to talk with me.
Okay.
And what I find dealing with some of the more radical individuals is that sometimes they feel ostracized, and when someone is willing to talk with them, sometimes that's all it takes to de-radicalize people.
Okay. So I'm getting it. It just sounds clear to me now. You disown all of the hate speech that was coming out of Charlottesville. Like,
course,
that is
because,
entirely bad.
Course.
You do not agree with any of it.
Absolutely.
You do not consider yourself a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist, a KKK, alt-right member. None of those you consider.
I consider all of those ideologies repugnant, specifically because they're authoritarian in nature. They do not they stand for just their own interests. They do not extend the same. They do not extend the same rights to other races and things like that.
And do you think that if you were in Charlottesville, would you be part of the anti-protest?
Probably, but as soon as Antifa would be showing up, then that'd be a very
all right. So explain
situation.
to me and the people, what is Antifa? You've said that a couple of times.
Right.
I hear it everywhere, but I want a good, clear definition. What is it, and what do you think? Why is there a problem with that?
Antifa is a movement of radical anarcho-communists.
Okay.
They dress up all in black. They have their communist flags, and they basically see themselves. They call the name is short for anti-fascists.
Yes.
But ideologically, they are full-blown communists, particularly anarcho-communists. So they want to violently overthrow capitalism.
Is there a public face I can put on this Antifa name, this organization, this group, or is it not?
No, because they wear masks.
Okay. All right. All right. So that is.
It is difficult because they also, it's not necessarily, it's more of a movement than a group.
Okay.
Because you will have some groups that identify themselves as Antifa, like the North Shore Antifa here close to Boston. But then you might have some other groups like BAMN in Berkeley, by any means necessary, that they will structure themselves sort of as a sort of student activist group or something, but then they will show up donning the uniform of Antifa like an alter ego.
Yes. And I think I agree with you wholeheartedly when you say everyone needs their fair share and needs to have the ability to go ahead and speak, right?
And Antifa, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Antifa's their whole rationale is that if you allow anyone, they're against liberals as well. They think liberals are in the way. And what their whole idea is that if you allow Nazis to even exist, one of their slogans is "Make racists afraid again."
Yeah.
So they think that if you allow these people to walk the streets unmolested, if you allow them to say anything even vaguely conservative, that's just on the road to full-blown neo-Nazism, and that those people need to be violently suppressed in order to prevent that. The problem is that what they end up doing is they just drive people into the arms of the alt-right, because they feel like, oh my goodness, these Antifa are going to, they're so radical, the government's largely ignoring them, we got to sort of band together, and the alt-right's just waiting with open arms.
Just wait, okay. Well, which makes sense, but they're not waiting for everybody, they're waiting for a specific group of people.
Yes.
I have to say, for people out there, the description, how he described Antifa, I am 1,000% against it. I am all with you. They are bad people. If you are part of the Antifa. I would love to hear your comments, just telling me if the way he described it is correct in the comment section below. And if you are a brave Antifa, participant, you're part of the organization, please contact me because I'd love to have you on. Mask, change your voice, I don't care. I would just love to hear from the other side, which is the Antifa.
And you're gonna have to watch out for those. There's some parody groups out there that pretend to be Antifa that are really not. Even though ideologically they do a very good job of imitating them, I will say.
Yes. And I think like you said, even in the beginning of this entire conversation, these labels are really, really, really hard to if you consider yourself like a free speech rally or libertarianism or progressive or whatever, you are thought to have the same exact beliefs as, the name. Or like the Bernie Sanders. If you're progressive, you believe everything Bernie Sanders says. If you're for part of the alt-right, you believe everything. What's his name?
Richard Spencer.
Exactly. If you're part of the Libertarianism Party, you believe everything Johnny Medlar does.
I actually do not like the Libertarian Party.
Oh, excuse me.
There's an interesting thing about libertarianism. It is a really sort of a wide spectrum of beliefs in and of itself. The Libertarian Party only represents sort of a small section of that. Okay. Which is one of the reasons why it's never been very successful. It's very hard to get libertarians to agree on stuff.
Okay, well, that's definitely not the best winning strategy, but I can understand it. I can definitely understand it. So let's talk about Donald Trump and his response to Charlottesville and how you and the free speech rally people responded to that, right? He's been like, he's been attacked. A lot of people are upset with the way he responded to it the first time and the third time. The second time, people don't really believe that it was him because it was really obvious. Even to me, I watched it a million times, that he was either reading off a bump of the paper that they gave him. It did not sound authentic. The most authentic he sounded was that last time when he wasn't even supposed to talk about it. He went to go talk about, national war or whatever, Korea, whatever he was supposed to talk about, and he devolved into Charlottesville, and that was kind of shitty when he was like the alt left and he was saying did they have mobs and they were fighting as well and they were bad people on both sides. How do you guys feel about that? Do you agree with anything he said?
I think that if you just call out the neo-Nazis, then you create the impression that you're fueling what Trump called the alt-left, or what we would know as Antifa. And that's one of the things that essentially fuels the alt-right, is the impression that everyone's just ignoring Antifa, no one's going to do anything about them, we've got to band together ourselves to protect ourselves from that. If you do on the other side, if you just criticize Antifa, then you create the opposite impression. You create the impression that you're ignoring the alt-right.
Yeah.
So really, we can nitpick forever about which is worse in their philosophy or in their actions or whatever. We can argue forever about which is worse, but you ultimately have to tackle both because they fuel each other.
Okay. But I have to say, because the last time you were on, you said that you voted for Trump. Correct?
Yes, I did.
So you voted for Trump. How are you feeling about him right now, and how do you feel about what he said about the situation?
I think that I think that he showed more leadership than a lot of that. Being willing to call out both sides. I think that's better than simply just going with the wind and focusing exclusively on the right wing. Of course, I can't emphasize enough how much I am against the racial collectivists on the right. But the problem is they're largely being fueled by other fringe radicals on the left. Those also need to be addressed.
Are you still a supporter of Trump? Do you think he's still better than what we would have had if Hillary was president? Like at this point, his White House has been chaotic. Steve Bannon just left a couple of days ago.
Oh yeah,
you really do still believe that he is better than what we would have had if Hillary Clinton was president right now?
Even if it falls short of what I would have liked to see, I still think that what we have now is still better than what I would have predicted under Hillary.
And you're saying that Trump is brave because he said that there was violence on both sides. You think that that's better?
I don't know I don't know if brave would be the accurate word, but I do think that he called the situation honestly, because there was violence on both sides. Antifa doesn't need to wait for provocation. If they see an opportunity to attack, they will attack. One of the reasons why they didn't mess with our rally back in May is because we outnumbered them.
Okay. So that's probably where where I probably have to part ways from. Mm-hmm. We've been agreeing most of the way here, but when it comes to Trump, I feel like at this point, it's too much. At this point, like the majority of the Republican Party is stepping away from him. And
well, that's one of the problems. I think that one of the reasons why I like Trump is because that he didn't simply conform to the rest of the Republican Party. I think the GOP establishment is part of the problem.
Okay. I think the establishment is part of the problem on both sides, which I agree with you there. But my God, really, violence on both sides?
There was violence.
Okay, all right.
No. I will say.
So someone did die, and that person was killed by someone that was part of the alt-right, was a white supremacist.
Yes, absolutely, and that was absolutely a terrorist act, and I hope that they throw the book at that guy who did.
Okay.
Antifa, it is true, Antifa has not killed anyone yet. That is not due to their lack of trying; it's due to their incompetence.
Okay, I don't know how much I want to agree with that, but I don't know because I don't see it. I don't know. I don't see the Antifa versus the alt-right. All I know is maybe Antifa is within the anti-protests. They just blend in the anti-protests.
They're the snakes hiding in the grass. They will hide among the counter-protesters. If they see an opportunity, they will strike, and then they will disappear back into the crowd.
Okay. So that's why, like I said, I really, really badly would love to have someone from the Antifa come on and tell me more about this whole Antifa thing, because I think it blew up a couple of weeks ago, and since then it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it, but I don't have a face. I don't even know what they're all about, what they're for. It's just hearsay from people who are not part of the organization.
Well, if you want to fix the alt-right problem, you do have to fix the Antifa problem as well.
Okay, but we all agree though that the alt-right problem has been much longer. I feel like the Antifa became a thing because of alt-right, because of the white supremacists, confidence that they have since Donald Trump has come to power.
Well, that sort of chicken and the egg argument is very interesting. Now, I do think that Antifa has been fueled by the alt-right in turn,
yes.
But I feel like the alt-right is essentially the almost the natural conclusion of the identity politics that has infected the left. They've just essentially taken that and just sort of applied it to themselves as white people.
But So that's the thing. A lot of times when people say identity politics, they want to blame the left. But I think the right just as much, if not more so, use identity politics all the time. When Donald Trump and Steve Bannon says, oh, the alt-right, the whites, the white supremacists, they're our group and we can get them to come up and vote for us and they'll get us into power, that is just as much identity politics as saying, we want more rights for the blacks, and I don't even think that's identity politics. That's equality. That's politics for everybody.
Yeah, well, the identity politics is specifically when people try to blame the other groups for essentially use. Another way I would call it is the politics of resentment. Okay. I think that I'm not going to deny that there's obviously been massive historical injustices against people of color. That's clear.
But it's not too far. We don't have to go way too far back.
It isn't too far back at all. There's still racism. That's clear too.
Okay.
But the fact is that I think that some of the ideologues within academia, and I think that it's creeped into the Democratic Party. I think it essentially infected the left.
So like what you were saying right there. So. Do you believe white privilege is a thing? Do you think that's an actual thing, or do you think that's something people have made up?
I think that it can be a thing, but I think that, I don't think it's easy to just point at something and say, oh, that's obviously because of white privilege. I think that, subconscious bias, all humans have subconscious bias.
Of course.
But you don't know what an individual's subconscious bias is. You don't know how an individual was raised.
Yes.
I was raised with the values of my parents. Raised me with the values of Dr. Martin Luther King. Judge people by their character, not by their skin color. Okay. So, are there other influences that could have made me biased in other ways? Of course. But the thing is that different individuals have had different experiences. It's very hard to also different regions have different subcultures and everything. So it's very hard to look at the entire West and say everyone must be racist because subconscious bias.
So I of course. So subconscious bias is it's part of everyone. Everyone has it. You can't escape it. You're raised a certain way, and you believe that those things that you were raised by and how it affects your life. It's even hard for me to tell what my subconscious biases are because they are subconscious.
Yeah.
So, but like back to Trump, back to the Republican Party, back to the right versus the left with this identity politics. Trump, when he says things like we got to get the immigrants out of here, when he says things like we have a Muslim ban because they're the ones causing these big terror attacks, when in fact we just had the young lady killed, by a terrorist here in America who is part of the right, part of the alt-right. Those are just as much as identity politics. And those are horrible. So I really dislike it. I think it really bothers me quite a bit. Because even if you want to say it's identity politics on the left, identity politics on the left is always trying to be as inclusive as possible. So when we say, when I talk about white privilege, I'm not saying white privilege is a problem, so all white men need to, be banned. I'm not saying like Trump, it's the Muslims that are the problem, so they need to be banned. I'm not saying it's the white men that are taking everyone's job. What I am saying is, it's a thing. It's a problem. It exists. It's something that people of color have to deal with every single day. So let's do something about it so it doesn't continue.
Well,
right?
What can you do about it? That's the thing that when people talk about I did mention. You mentioned the identity politics on the right. I think the right wing needs to drop it as well.
Okay, good. Because so you're fair for everybody. Identity politics needs to go. Get out of here.
Now, particularly when it's based around resenting other groups. See, if someone wants to get together, if like a bunch of like black people or white people or Hispanic people or whatever want to get together around sort of an idea of a common ancestry and sort of create a community around that, I'm not necessarily against that in and of itself, as long as you're not making enemies out of other groups.
Okay.
So
which makes sense. It's the obvious way to go. As long as I'm not with all of my black friends, if we and NAACP, and we say that we're all here to make sure that other black people, are well aware of the situation and that good things happen to them, good for you. But if we're all meeting and it's saying white privilege is the problem and we need to get the white man down, that is also a problem.
Right? I think so, yes.
Okay, so we agree. I feel like this is good. Like, I've said that we agree a shit ton throughout this conversation, and I'm happy about that, because when I saw your Facebook post recently that has been getting some hate, some love, you were holding up a sign that said Black Lives Do Matter.
Yes.
You were holding up signs that I would hold up any day, every day of my life, which makes me really, really happy. So being part of this free speech rally, how do you think you can move on and continue as a libertarianism, as someone who believes the things you believe, without getting lumped up into that group of the alt-right Nazis, KKK, white supremacists? How do you want that to happen?
Well, we learned a lot from this process, as far as working with the police, and as far as trying to get our message out there. We essentially set ourselves up in a situation where it was easy for Antifa to start spreading rumors that took off and went viral. Yes. That we were related to the white supremacists down in Charlottesville. Which, as far as the fringe left is concerned, they really don't see a distinction. So
okay. So I don't know if I consider myself a far left, but most people who are part of the left would consider me far left, because I am way like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders party. But I agree with you. Mm-hmm. So I don't want when you say the far left thinks
I'm generally referring to the
Antifa crowd,
the more authoritarian types. Yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, this is absolutely amazing, John. I think it was absolutely great. You guys, we have to understand something. And now I'm talking to you guys out there. We got to understand something. As easy as it is for someone to just lump together the crew, just because I'm free speech rally and there's one speaker that was at the Charlottesville march that is also going to be here in Boston, we can't all of a sudden saying it's horrible, it's hateful, it's the worst thing ever. At the pictures he had, the rally they wanted, as he described it to us today, it sounds like all he was saying is, I want them to have the right to speak. And having an anti-protest, going to Boston Common, and the 40,000, you said, the 40,000 human beings that went there to say, no, this is not right, they should have the right to do that.
Absolutely.
But I think wholeheartedly, like you said in the beginning, they were saying it's not right to do that, but what he was standing for, what he was believing, what they were setting out to do is something I believe most progressive, most liberals, most people on the left would agree with wholeheartedly. It sucks that you weren't able to have your speakers say what they wanted to say, because I would love to hear how they feel about it. I know how you personally feel about it. We grew up in the same town, we went to the same schools. I'd say largely we agree on most things. I think Donald Trump is something we can have an entirely different conversation about on another day. But my goodness, Johnny, thank you so much for coming on, talking to me and the people. We got to do this more often because this brings people together instead of the the violence and the bullshit that happens.
Swartik, it is always a pleasure to speak with you.
You guys heard it. It's a pleasure to speak with me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Catch you guys later. Deuces.